Are half of all gamers female? Let's try and settle this once and for all. As a show about games, which I hope is pretty obvious from the title, we're often confronted with a strange and seemingly incongruous fact. Nearly half of all people who play games are women.
48% of gamers are women.
We've cited it here, and also here, and a lot of you in the comments are understandably incredulous. That's crazy. If there are so many women out there playing games, then where are they? Says your gut, in whatever voice your gut makes. So after giving it some thought, I agree. Sometimes it seems impossible. 90% of game shows' audience is male, so it follows that if a show about video games has an audience that's mostly male, then people who play video games must be mostly dudes too, right?
And bring on the dudes!
So you perfectly reasonable game show viewers say, I don't see female gamers in the droves that the numbers say. So what's up with this stat? And is it finally time to call BS on it once and for all? First, let's take a look at what we know. The numbers we're looking at come from the Electronic Software Association's yearly essential facts about the computer and video game industry. I know, a super riveting read. Yes, the ESA is a lobbying organization, but it's balanced by the fact that the ESA represents big publishers like EA and Activision who need an accurate picture of who's buying games to, well, make business decisions. So how did they gather the data? A series of surveys were conducted by the media research firm Ipsos Media Connecticut. They contacted over 2,200 households, surveying both the head of the household and the most frequent gamers, assuming that's not the same person. They make a point to emphasize that social and mobile games like Temple Run count as games. And from that, they found that 48% of the people who were identified as the most frequent gamer in the house were women.
And bam! Did it.
And a very recent British survey of 4,000 people had very similar results, with 52% of their population being women. We'll link to all this in the description. Now, there's plenty of reasons to be skeptical about the results versus what you personally see. The biggest might be, well, your personal experience. I mean, you may never or rarely see women in game lobbies or playing your favorite shooters, right? But the thing is, the type of games that appeal to someone who burned through Destiny on their first day only accounts for a fraction of all video game play. Think about it this way. Over the last 10 years, there have been 160 million Xbox 360s and PlayStation 3s that have been sold around the world. That many smartphones have been sold just in the last 2 years, and research shows that 30% of the time spent on smartphones is time spent gaming. That's more than Facebook and surfing the internet. And that's a big part of the reason that the largest group of players that the ESA surveyed were adult females, not boys 17 and under. Okay, but I can hear you screaming, those aren't real games, they're casual. They're probably just playing Candy Crush Saga for years at a time.
Typical casual gamer. Things get too complicated, you go back to your little casual games.
But to say an uber popular casual game like The Sims or Cut the Rope doesn't count as a game, while a vicious shooter does, is kind of like saying a Rottweiler is more of a real dog than a pug. They're both dogs, and which one you choose is simply a matter of preference. I can hear you yelling through the screen, but Jamin, they don't have passion. Being a gamer is about playing and it's about dedication. That's true, but among people who play games the most, casual and social games are played for the longest durations by a good country mile. So if we're gonna go by the numbers, because, you know, that's what's fair, it's the casual games that are the most real, even if they don't earn you that beloved gamer tag. Plus, when it comes to buying games, females are just as devoted as the fellas. They buy an equal amount of games, so that means on average they have a bigger backlog than the bros. Okay, so this is still kind of mysterious for some of you, and I understand. If females play games on equal footing with males, you say, why do female gamers sometimes seem non-existent? Here's where I think we get mixed up. There's a difference between gamer as a realm of human activity and gamer as an identity. If you think of gamer as the former, then the ESA stats make sense. Women play games, so according to the definition, they are gamers. But if you think of gamer as an identity associated with luxurious gaming dens and camping out at GameStop for Call of Duty, then the ESA stats may seem a little bit crazy. So male gamers are playing a select few titles, shrugging their shoulders and saying, where are these 48% of gamers who are women? Meanwhile, lots of women are playing games, but not necessarily identifying with the gamer identity, although of course a lot do. For the most part though, it's like ships passing in the night. That's what makes this whole debate over perception so confusing. The word gamer actually means two different contradictory things simultaneously. And even worse, the internet actually perpetuates this mode of thinking by using what Upworthy CEO Eli Pariser calls filter bubbles. Rather than bringing people together with diverse ideas as the internet was originally intended, Pariser argues search engines and social media actually algorithmically push you towards people that are just like you.
What the hell are you? I am you.
So there's this weird ambiguity in how we should think about female players. You could look at every electronic game and say nearly half of all women are gamers, or you could look more narrowly within the culture of gamers and see there are fewer. However, as demonstrated by recent events, self-identified gamers aren't always very hospitable to female gamers. So females don't advertise their sex. One Ohio University study shows that players who speak with a female voice got harassed more often in Halo 3, leading more ladies to keep quiet, which totally makes sense. That's the logical thing to do.
Are you an archaeologist? Because I have a big bone that needs examining, Mrs. Pretty Lady.
See, this is what happens every time.
And our own viewer Alexandria Johnson commented that she removes any trace of her gender from her Steam account to avoid being harassed. Again, totally a sensible move. So you can understand why many women who play lots and lots of games don't call themselves gamers. That universe hasn't exactly been kind to them.
It's always the same. I'm always either fat and ugly or I'm a slut.
Everybody knows that girls who play Xbox are fat.
So maybe it's best not to think of games in terms of gamers, because all players are unique in different ways. I threw out my definition of a gamer in a past episode as someone who plays all types of games, kind of like an aficionado. But maybe that definition isn't even that helpful, because when we start thinking of certain games as for gamers and other games as not for gamers, it leads to elitism, which can unintentionally manifest itself as sexism, and that becomes really embarrassing. As Professor Ian Bogos argued in his book How to Do Things with Video Games, if we're very fortunate, gamers will disappear altogether, and we'll be left with people, and half of ordinary people are female. You just don't see them as much when you're looking down the scope in Halo. So what do you think? Have I finally convinced you that half of all gamers are female, or does it still not jive with your personal experience? Hash it out in the comments, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe. I'll see you next week. Last week we talked about whether or not you'd like to live inside of the virtual reality world of Sword Art Online. Let's see what you had to say. Ratelslangen complained about spoilers in the episode, even though he or she had already watched all of Sword Art Online. So there's a whole other tangent about spoilers that I don't need to get into right now, but if you're watching a show like Breaking Bad, for example, and you don't want Breaking Bad to be spoiled, then you probably shouldn't, or at least I wouldn't, watch an episode discussing the intricacies of Breaking Bad. So if I ruined anything for you, I'm really sorry, but it's also not like I was doing a video about cats or something and just threw in Sword Art spoilers, because that would be really mean. Tamerico recommends the game from Log Horizon, which I was unfamiliar with. Apparently the characters are stuck, but they don't mind being stuck, which is kind of nice. I'll have to check it out. Sarah Vittrup is not excited about virtual reality for reasons that I had not actually thought about. Sarah doesn't like first-person games, and a lot of things that you see in virtual reality right now are things like flying or space fighters or shooters or whatever it might be, but they're all basically first-person games. So, but that's a really good point. I'm curious though whether they still count as first-person in the way that we traditionally think of them, because your screen is, ostensibly so much larger because it's the environment that you're existing in. So yeah, I wonder if you had a game where you were playing a board game in virtual reality, whether that would still count as a first-person game. Good point, Sarah. Gizmo, from Pizmo naturally, says that virtual reality in the future will only be reserved for the wealthy because you'll need money to pay for the new equipment, to pay for the hard drive space, whatever it might be, bandwidth costs, etc., unless you can make money inside of virtual reality. But then in that case, if you're using the time that you're spending inside of virtual reality to pay for more virtual reality, then it's not really much different from real life then, is it, huh? Lana LeRay has an excellent question, or more of an observation, about her and her friends, specifically that they use their online handles, their online screen names in the real world. Even though she knows her friends' real names, the ones given to her by her parents or by the state or whatever, she still decides to call her friends by the things that she calls them online. It speaks to this larger question of identity, which we've talked about in the past, and I think that Facebook's recent move, the push to get people to identify on Facebook with who they actually are and some of the controversies around that. I think we're going to see more discussions about what it means to have an identity online and how much that's connected to who we are in the real world. André Gomes de Oliveira asks about bugs, specifically bugs in virtual reality. And by bugs, I mean glitches, errors, that sort of thing. If we start to tie more actual importance to the things that happen to us inside of virtual reality, then the things that go wrong inside those worlds take on a whole new meaning. So just think if, I don't know, your online wallet accidentally gets stolen, or you get stuck inside of a wall. Those could be really terrible, terrifying, painful things. So we've been shooting for more than a year now. I know, crazy, right? More than a year. Anyway, we have this amazing set with photos from Ian Andrews' in-game screenshots that he's taken at Steam postcards, and sometimes, unfortunately, they fall down and I have to put them back up. So I'm gonna do that right now, but yeah. Actually, it's funny. I've never actually looked behind the set. Maybe we should, hold on one second. Whoa, this is crazy. There was a set back here the whole time, a set behind the set. Morgan, why didn't you tell me? Did you know? Anyway, we'll use this next week.